Just get to work. There we go. All right, what's up, familia? Welcome inside the hotel room. Hope you guys are doing good. Keep in between the lines. Got your load secure, man. I'm just kicking back, just chillaxing, man. Nothing major and all. But I wanted to invite uh, a friend of mine on. This man has lived a very, very interesting life. He's kind of the guys that they make movies about. So I just want to bring him on, man. You guys might have seen him on my channel on Rolling with the Punches. He does a boxing channel. He also does Sheepdog Assists. And he loves boxing, so I always have him on with Cholo Boxing. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in my man, Mr. David Contreras.
Hey, Ed, thank you very much for the invite, man. I'm looking forward to all your questions, and hopefully your viewers have some questions too that we might be able to answer. Once again,
Yeah.
estoy muy agradecido. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. David, like you, man, when I hear your story, I'm like, wow. Like this is a movie. This needs to be a movie. What's up, Joker? Like, you've done a lot, man. You really have. You've done a lot in your life, and I just found it very interesting. Every time you and I talk here on YouTube, we're always talking boxing, which is a great thing. It's a great thing. But I just kind of
Yes, it
thought,
is.
like, hey, you know what? Let's actually talk about you. Let's talk about Mr. David Contreras. I don't know if a lot of people really know your story. Some might, some
Mhm.
might not, David. So with that, bro, let's get into it, man. We'll start with from the beginning. Where'd you grow up? Siblings, mom and dad in the picture, not in the picture?
You know what? I was born in Tijuana, Mexico. I was
Mhm.
born in Tijuana, and when I was 9 months old, my parents migrated to San Isidro, right across the border, and we lived there probably for about a year, year and a half. From right there, we moved over to Chula Vista, and that's what I was. That's where I was raised. I was raised in Chula Vista. Chula Vista is between downtown San Diego, National City. Chula Vista, for those of you who don't know San Diego, and then it's Otay, and then it's Del Sol, San Isidro, and then it's Tijuana. So we're probably 10 miles from Tijuana, from the border, and that's where I was raised. I went to elementary school there, junior high, high school, and I went to college there at Southwestern College. So yeah, that's where I was raised there in Chula Vista, California. My father was a pastor and a bishop in the Pentecostal church and the Apostolic church. He was a man of God. He was a man that, Ed, I never saw him drink. I never saw him smoke. I never saw him beat my mom. What I remember of my father, very wise man, a hard worker, worked in construction, would be up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to work and come back at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. My mom would have his food ready at the table. He'd eat, jump in the shower, and then we were off to church. So I grew up in a Pentecostal home, like I said, in an apostolic church. My father was a pastor for many years, and I have two sisters. One of my older sisters, Rachel, her husband is a pastor in right there in Rancho Cucamonga,
Okay.
Fountain of Truth. They have a church of about 3,000 members, and they have
Wow.
churches in Russia, in Medellin, in Cali, in Mexico, in Germany, in Japan. My brother-in-law Sam Valverde is another man of God. I've been blessed because I've been around good men of God,
Mhm.
and I'm just blessed to be around them. And my younger sister, she was a correctional officer, Anna, and she's since retired, had a medical retirement, and she's living her life taking care of grandchildren. And my mom's
Wow.
still alive. My father's in heaven now. Like I said, he was a great man. I am so blessed to have had my father and my mother, which were good people, people of God. Yeah.
Wow. Wow, man. For anybody who's just tapping in right now and is probably thinking like, who's this guy? Who's David Contreras? We're gonna get to a lot of things that he's done. I mean, he's
Yeah.
worked with the cartels, he's worked with, the worst prison gangs. This guy has rolled around with, a lot of the heavy hitters, man. But we'll get to that. So David, okay, so you grew up, man. uh, in a house basically of God, man. Your
Yeah,
family
yes, I
was
did.
on to the
Yes.
Lord and everything like that.
Mhm.
That's good. Would
Yeah.
you say you had a good childhood, David? Going to
Oh,
school and everything?
wonderful. Brother, wonderful childhood, man. You know what? I didn't know what it was to be prejudiced. You
Mhm.
know, the gabachos, the negritos, the chicanos, the Filipinos, dude, we all got along at my high school, Castle Park. You know, everybody got along. So I didn't know what it was to be prejudiced, believe it or not, until probably 1984 when I got hired at the California Department of Corrections,
Mhm.
working in the prison system. That's where I was basically exposed to a lot of prejudice, a lot of biased, a lot of hate. But before that, I mean, I grew up in a good home. You know, I played football, worked out every day. But you know, if a lot of people ask me, well, when did you become a want to be a police officer? Ed, I was that kid that from a very young age always wanted to be a police officer. And
Okay.
right next to where I lived, there's a barrio called Otay. And I met all those guys once I went to junior high school. That's where all the guys from Otay went, and the guys from Chula Vista and us. And that's where I was exposed to the gangsters. My cousins got involved. Some of them got involved in the gang world. But you know, I was that kid growing up, Ed, that I would always, my friends were always back then, you know, in 68, 65, you know, when I first started elementary school, 5 years old and throughout elementary school to 71, they didn't have special ed programs. You know, if somebody was dyslexic, they were just put in school with everybody else. And there was always a group of kids, they didn't have those special ed programs that couldn't read, that couldn't multiply. And I was that guy that I was always helping those kids. Whenever somebody would pick on those kids, I was that guy that was defending those kids. And I was that guy that when nobody wanted to sit with Johnny Payne because he was special, I was the one that sat next to Johnny and brought him over to my friends. Because I mean, I was always in sports. I was very well respected, even in elementary school. Throughout my life, I've been very well respected. So I would bring them into my fold, you know, but I was that guy that always cared for those in need. So that as a child, I was that guy. And with that
Were,
in mind, I knew I wanted to be a police officer at a very young age.
were you always a big guy? Did you always have some size on you? You say you
I
played
was
sports. What
chubby,
sports
yeah.
were you playing?
Yeah. You know what? I always had some size on me. I started lifting weights when I was 13 years old. I
Mhm.
started boxing. I used to have my own boxing gym in my
Mhm.
backyard, and then I used to have different gloves. And I used to box with my tío, who was an older man. I used to box with neighbors with their older brothers. And
Mhm.
I mean, I always enjoyed boxing. And I was that guy that, and I didn't go hard on some of the youngsters, but we threw down. I mean, broken noses. I mean, bloody mouths. I mean, it was a lot of fun growing up, and I was also really into wrestling too, but not into the school wrestling. I was more into the lucha libre. You
Oh,
know, the mil mascaras, dude. When I was like probably 7, 8 years old, I was that weird kid that went to school with a Santos mask, with a mil mascara
oh
mask.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, as a little kid, as a little kid. But yeah, you know what? I always protected those that were weaker. I've always, and even today, I still do that. It's who I am.
I got a Santos mask and I have a Blue Demon mask, but I don't have a Mil Mascaras mask.
Oh, really? Oh, I had
Yeah,
them all.
I need to get me that one, but
Do you?
they're
Yeah,
pretty pricey.
yeah,
Those are they're pretty pricey. So
yeah.
let's see.
And,
What's
and
up
you,
to
and you know
everyone in
what,
here,
Ed?
man?
Ed, before I forget, I was that kid that we would go. My father would every Friday. The only time off we had from church, believe it or not, was on Friday nights, and that was family night. So we would go to Tijuana and eat tacos. And every time we'd go, I'd always save my money, and I would always buy a magazine called El Ring Mundial, which had posters of Chucho Castillo, Mantequilla Nápoles. So on one side of my bedroom as a little boy, I had nothing but boxing posters, and then on the other side, I would buy the Lucha Libre also. I would have nothing but Mil Máscaras, Tinieblas, Rayo de Jalisco. It's funny. I don't remember what I ate for breakfast, but I remember every one of those names.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was that kid that always loved boxing and wrestling and sports in general.
Okay. So you're saying you always wanted to become a cop. Okay.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Ever since you were a kid. And I'm sure
Yeah.
probably parents just kind of think like, oh yeah, a lot of kids say that they want to become a cop or they want to become this. But when your parents saw that, okay, no, this Vato's for real. He's really looking to become a cop. Were they cool with that?
No, no, not at all. My dad was against it because
Okay.
being from the apostolic church, you can't kill anybody. You can't carry a gun.
Uh-huh.
They believe the scripture where they misinterpret that scripture where it says they hit you in the right, turn the other cheek. And I'm not saying they misinterpreted. That's their interpretation. I'm not going to judge
Okay.
them. But so no, my dad was very much against it. But what happened, Ed, is when I graduated from high school, God placed a burden. I gave my life to the Lord when I was 13 years old. And when I gave my life to the Lord, I mean, I was that guy that was talking to everybody about the Lord. I went to high school with, there was probably maybe 8 Christians. By the time I left high school, there was probably 35 of us that were serving the Lord. I got a lot of people to serve the Lord, and we used to, that's a different story. But when I graduated from high school, I read a book by the name of Run Baby Run, and also The Cross and the Switchblade by David Wilkerson. And basically, what that book was about, it was about a white preacher from Pennsylvania somewhere whom God had placed a burden in his heart to go to New York and to go to the gangs and preach to the gang members. And back then they were called the Mau Maus, the Jets, and different gang sets. So this preacher goes to New York and he starts preaching. And a guy named Nicky Cruz, who now is world-renowned preacher, accepted the Lord, and the whole gang accepted the Lord. So at 18, I read that book, and I still wanted to be a cop. But I was that kid, Ed, before I get into this story, that didn't know any cops. My first experience with a cop was terrible. I got beat up by a cop for no reason at all. I was at a football game, and there was a big riot between Castle Park and Sweetwater. And as I'm standing there watching the game, I was probably the only guy watching the game. Everybody else was fighting. A huge gavacho, big white cop comes by, and he had a baton, straight handle baton, and he's moving the crowd. And I'm literally watching the game, and he had the baton through his fingers like this. He hit me so hard in my solar plex that I literally went down on the ground. I was 12 years old, 13 years old. That was my
Yeah.
first experience with a cop. I went down and everybody's running. There's a riot. Everybody's stabbing each other, shooting each other. No shots, but it was stabbing and beating each other up. And I'm laying there on the ground, and I remember I couldn't breathe. And I remember the only thought that came to mind, I didn't think about dying or anything. I just thought, I'm never going to be that cop. I am never going to be that cop. And I'll tell you, it probably for about 6 months, I had a big blue bruise here in my chest. And every
Mhm.
time I take a shower or look at myself in the mirror and I would see that black and blue bruise here in my chest, I would always say, I'm never going to be that cop. I'm going to be a different cop. I'll never hit a kid like how that cop hit me. And he didn't call no medical help. I mean, I crawled home, you know what I mean? And so that was my first experience with a cop. It wasn't a good experience. And plus,
Mhm.
the only experiences we had right there where I live were negative experience with the cops because I mean,
Wow.
you would see them, it was very different. I mean, growing up in East LA, same thing.
Mhm.
All it is just changes location. And
Yeah.
so I always said, I'm not going to be that cop. So at 18 years old, I graduated from high school and I read that book. So I decide to put my career as a cop. First of all, I didn't know how to be a cop. I didn't know what
Mhm.
school to, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know any cops. Nobody in my family were cops. We didn't know any cops. All I knew was preachers. So
Mhm.
what happened was I opened up a rehabilitation program right there at the church, and I started going to the barrio, to Otay, to Logan Heights, to Pozole, to all the barrios in San Diego, and to preach to gang members about the Lord. And
Okay.
next thing you know, I had it was a 5 bedroom house. By the time I left there, I was there from 1978 to 1984. I had 36 men in my home. 36
Okay.
men. I mean, every room had 10, 10, 3 tiers of bunk beds
Bunk
that we got
beds.
from the joint, as a matter of fact. I mean,
Okay.
literally 3 tiers. We had two or
Yeah.
three per room. And even in the living room, we had two or three. And it was a very poor program. We ran the program by having car sales, car washes,
Mhm.
tamales sales. I learned how to make tamales because we didn't have any help from the government. So we'd sell tamales, we'd have bake sales, burrito, you name it, we were selling it to sustain the home. So it was there that I was introduced to the Mexican mafia, to the Nuestra Familia, because the men that would come to my home were from St. Quentin, were from Tehachapi, were from Tracy, were from Chino. They were getting parole to my home. And here
Mm,
I am, an 18-year-old kid running this house with nothing but, I mean, hardcore pintos, vatos that were in the NF that had killed people in the joint. And now here I am talking to them about the Lord. And they would always say, Contreras, you've never been a drug addict. No, I've never been. You've never been a gang member. No, I've never been a gang member. So why is it that you're doing what you're doing? This is how I would answer them. I would always say, Jesus Christ was never a gang member. Jesus Christ was never a sinner. Jesus Christ was never a drug addict. But Jesus loves a sinner. And God has placed that burden in my heart. And believe it or not, Ed, a lot of guys made it through my program.
okay.
Some of them today are pastors. Some of them are
Come on.
missionaries. Some of them became missionaries in Honduras. Others became missionaries in Spain. Drug addicts that went through my program. A lot of them are. One of them is a pastor, George Molina, of a church that is growing by the numbers in the worst place of Tijuana, La Colonia Libertad. And he's probably watching the show. And he came through my program, Stone Tecato, but God changed his life. And it was beautiful to see how God changed a lot of lives. And like I said, not everybody made it. I mean, if I would count how many made it, I would say maybe 1 out of 20, 1 out of 25, 1 out of 30 made it. The rest
Okay.
went back.
Yeah.
But yeah, but a lot of them made it, and a lot of them are serving the Lord today.
Okay. Hey, David, real quick. Hey, by the way, shouts to Ralph 707, man, for the $10. He says, what's a good early boxing workout to get the day started
For me, boxing workout. I mean,
in the morning to
I
get the
don't.
day started?
To get the start, I don't do a boxing workout. What I do is I go in and I do 100 push-ups a day to get my day started. First thing I do, get out of bed. First of all, I thank the Lord, and I do my 100 push-ups. That gets my day started, brother. 100 push-ups a day.
Yeah, I would say,
For
Ralph,
boxing, yeah,
I would say I go for a run first.
yes,
First and
I agree with
foremost,
that. Yeah,
before anything else, I go for a run first.
yeah,
And at least, I mean, I don't know where everybody's at, to go
mhm,
to whatever level you're at. I run at least a mile, sometimes 2 miles, and then I get my workout started. If you're not on that level, if you want to run more than that, that's cool. But I do that just to warm up, and then I could get going. But if you
yeah,
can run, maybe just a quarter mile, that's whatever it may be, speed walk, get the juices flowing, man. And then you can, start doing some pretty cool boxing workouts, even hitting the bag. But I never recommend just throwing gloves on and start hitting the bag just on a
yeah.
cold body. You gotta warm
No,
up. I always like to go for a run or even skip some rope. 3 rounds, skipping rope in between rounds, hit some sit-ups, 25 sit-ups or so, and then you can start with the workout. But all right, wow, David. Okay, so I didn't know that,
mhm.
man. I didn't know that that's when you got in contact with some of those big boys, man. So
Oh
it
yeah.
wasn't you. So it wasn't when you were a cop. It was
No, no, it was when I
that
was
time.
running New Life.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then, how did it come about when you became a cop? How did you become a cop? And how does
Well,
one become a cop?
Let me tell you before I get to there. Let me just tell you a story of. There's a guy by the name of Weddle Sherm. Weddle Sherm is probably one of the most influential members of the Mexican mafia.
Yes,
He's from
yes.
a barrio there in San Diego called Shelltown and called Gamma Street. Actually, him and his brother started Gamma Street. When I was preaching at my dad's church, I was his deacon at his church. I was running this rehabilitation program. So now these guys were getting out of prison, and so now word starting getting out. We're getting around the joints, not only in the joints, but also in the county jail. That hey, you know what? There's this programa called New Life, and instead of going to the Pinta, you could go to this program. This guy named David Contreras is running this program. So one day, a guy named Ricky Saucedo reaches out to me. He was from Shelltown. And he was getting ready to go to prison, I think, for 7, 8 years. And he goes, "Hey, do you mind coming and praying for me?" So what I did, and like I said, I wasn't a pastor. I wasn't even a reverend back then. Later I became one, but at that time I was 19 years old, and my dad had a preacher's credential. And he had his little briefcase. So what I would do, I would tell my mom to make me burritos. She'd make 20 burritos and throw them all in the briefcase. And then I would go to the county jail using my dad's credential because his picture wasn't on there. I'm a junior. So David Contreras. So I would show the preacher's credential and my ID, David Contreras, and they would let me in. And then the interviews were like the attorney client. That's where they let the ministers in, right? So I would go in and I would sit down, and the inmates, no matter if they went for a muerte, no matter if they went for burglary, whatever, they would come in like attorney client and sit with me, and I would give them burritos. But before I would give them burritos, I talked to them about the Lord, and I'd pray with them, and then some of them I'd go visit their families, and then their families started becoming members of our church, and a lot of these guys started going to my program. The reason why I'm saying that, during that time, there was this guy, Weddle Sherm, was fighting his first murder case. And that's a murder that he went up to prison for. And he was there, but this is before he became a member of the Mexican mafia. He was a stone killer, even as a young man. And it was there that I got a chance for about 6-8 months every week, sometimes twice a week. I'd go pray with him. I'd give him burritos, and we talk about the scripture. And then when he got convicted on that murder, I think he took the bus on Wednesday. I saw him Monday and never saw him again. But I got a chance to witness to him and there's so many other guys, man, that later on became emeros or became hardcore Hell's Angels that I got a chance to witness about the Lord
Hey,
there. Yeah.
hey, David, how was it for you, man? I mean, you're young. You're what, 19 years old running that
I was
thing?
20
Oh,
years old. Yeah.
okay, and you're dealing with some hardcore bad boys, man.
Yeah.
A lot of these dudes ended up becoming, legends in the
Yeah.
California underground, man. How
Yeah.
was it for you? You're 19. I mean, in the streets or anything, you're nothing but a youngster, homie. It's like, but you're
Yeah.
running that, and you're dealing with some hardcore, bad mofos. How was it? How did they look at you? Did they look at
You
you?
know what? I don't know how they looked at me, but um, respect. I always respected everybody, and they respected me. And more than anything, I would always. I mean, it was a Christian rehabilitation program. It was a in-house facility where they lived for 6 months to a year.
Okay.
And you know what? They just saw my sincerity. They saw that I was sincere and I had nothing to gain. Dude, when I was doing that, Ed, that was the poorest part of my life because I wasn't getting paid for this. Sometimes on the weekends, on a Monday, instead of going to the program, I'd go work construction just to pay my rent. The church wasn't giving me a cent back then. Everything that we made in the car washes was all for the program. We'd go to the food bank. It was all for the program. We didn't have any state funds or county funds because of the church and separation of church and state. We were a Christian program. So they saw how poor I was. They saw how humble I was, and I say this humbly. Trust me, I'm not looking for nobody's sympathy. I say this humbly. And I think that they saw that I was sincere, but I was always a big kid too. I mean, I wasn't, somebody that, I mean, I always respected people, but they knew that, that I was respectful and I loved the Lord and I was there to talk to them about the Lord. And not once did I ever get socked up. Not once did I ever, I mean, there was a couple of times there was a fight and we'd break it up. I mean, these guys are hardcore pintos coming out of
Yeah.
Folsom, man, coming out of Tehachapi. Back then, Tehachapi, St. Quentin. St. Quentin was St. Quentin. It ain't what it is today. It was St. Quentin. So, but you know what? It was the grace of God. I think to answer your question, how did they see me? Through the eyes of through the grace of God. It was the grace of God because I was very sincere with the word of God with these gentlemen, with these men that were in the program. And we always took care of their families too.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Wow. I think of me at 19 years old.
Oh, yeah. And these were
It's kind
hardcore
of,
dudes,
yeah,
man.
man. You're dealing
Yeah,
with some big dogs, man, and
yeah,
it's like, where
yeah.
I mean, you were always, seems like you were always a man of faith, but were you scared at times? It's like, man, I'm right here with some killers.
You know what? Back then, I didn't think about it. My assistant director was a guy by the name of Daniel Aro. Daniel Aro was the first guy that went to my program. He was the very first guy that I went to the Barrio Notay, and this guy was like 6'1", half Indian, half Comanche, and half Chicano. And this vato was a hardcore vato loco from Otay, had done time at Tracy. But when God changed his life, God did a miracle in his life. And man, Daniel Aro, he became my assistant director. And when I left, and I'll talk a little bit about that, he became the director and became a minister, became a pastor of the youth group, and just a man of God. And he was my second in command. And here's a Vato Loco that was the second in command, a lot older than me. I was 19. He must have been maybe 35, maybe 15 years older than me. But this dude, God did a miracle in his life. And he's with the Lord now. And I look forward to seeing him again, hopefully sooner than later. I miss him a lot. But this man was a man of God. And I think that God put him there because he's the one that everybody really not feared because he loved the Lord, but they knew that he didn't play games. And I learned a lot from him that later, what I learned from him later helped me when I worked in the Pinta and also the streets.
David, how does one become a cop? How did you become a cop? How does one become the Huda? How does one do that?
Well, you know what? There's a lot of ways that you could become. Nowadays, it's very different than when I mean, we were first generation Mexican American family. Mexican family, forget the American. We became Americans once we moved here. We're first, so we didn't have any. All my tios, my tias, my primos. I think I was probably the first cop in our family, believe it or not. I believe I was the first
Okay.
cop in our, and I mean, in the whole Contreras family. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about, hundreds, I don't remember anybody becoming a cop. Later on, I had a cousin that became a cop with LAPD. Her name's Samantha. But other than that, I think I was the very first. So it was very hard for me because I didn't know what to. When I graduated from high school, I told my counselor I want to be a police officer. When he looked at me, he goes, I see here, he had my folder, and he goes, I see here your dad's in construction. He goes, you know what? You have the build of a construction worker. Because like I said, I was a pretty big kid. And he goes, I think that you should be a construction worker. And I go, I want to be a police officer. He goes, do you know anything about him? I go, no. He goes, there's a college. I go, I didn't even know what a college was, Ed.
Mm,
I didn't know later on I went to college. When I ran
mm.
New Life, me and Daniel took a couple of AJ classes, administrative justice classes, but I didn't know nothing. I didn't know any cops. I didn't know anybody. So I really didn't have a clue. Nowadays, if somebody wants to be a police officer, go to sheepdogassist.com and I will help you become a police officer. I will show you exactly what you need to do. I will send you a book on how to become a police officer because we need good Chicanos. We need good people in general. Not only Chicanos, but just people of color that have compassion for our gente to become police officers. So, yes, I will help them. And then if you want to later on, we could put my website, have them go on there, email me, and I will help them. I'll send them a book, How to Become Police Officer.
Okay. And in your day, how did you become a cop? What was the
Well,
step that you did?
what happened was I when I was in my dad's church, I finally got to a point at 24 years old that I just didn't believe how I used to believe. You know what I mean? I didn't.
Okay.
I started doubting, never God, doubting a lot of the religious beliefs that I had learned throughout the years, and because of that, um, that's one of the there's other reasons. I left the church at 24 years old. I left
Mm,
the church. I moved to my sister's house. They were pastoring in Fontana at the time, and I lived there for about 3 or 4 months. And then right away, I got hired with the California Department of Corrections. And then that's where I started my law enforcement career. I didn't start as a police officer. I started as a correctional officer. What's this gentleman saying? My dad's a police officer or a
Oh
parole
yeah,
agent?
yeah.
Yeah, it's a
That's my
retired
boy
parole
Traveling
agent.
Charlie.
He came on American Me when it was being filmed in Old Folsom when he was there. Oh, cool, man. Orale. That's awesome. So I started with the California Department of Corrections. I went through the Corrections Academy um, from being a preacher to all of a sudden now I'm working the pinta. You know what I mean? And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny, Ed, because when you're going through the corrections academy, they brainwash you to believe that everybody's out to get you. Don't tell them your name. Don't tell them anything about you. Don't tell them where you're from because they'll put a hit on your family. Wah, wah, wah. Right. And everybody were out there. Hey, man, nobody's going to know me. Dude, we were doing on the job training. It's called OJT. They sent me to Tracy. I'm walking the Yarda with a bunch of young fish, brand new fish. This is after being in the academy for a month, 2 months. I don't remember how long it was back in '84, but they send me there for my OJT training. And as I'm walking in with a bunch of, new fish, and there's a sergeant or somebody walking with us, this vato that I had prayed for with Weddle Sherm, this guy's name was Carlos Zuniga. This vato was a Hell's Angel sympathizer. Looks at me from from one side of the yarda, and he yells out, "Brother David, praise the Lord!" And everybody's like, "Who's Brother David? And what is praise the Lord?" Dude, I knew exactly what it was. You know what I mean? I look up, and all of a sudden, man, and I see Carlos, and then when I got to my pinta, the pinta where I actually got assigned to, which was CMC. Dude, first time I walk in the yarda, Brother David, praise the Lord. These were guys that had gone through my program and now, left, became tecatos, or they were tecatos, and they got arrested. Now they're in the pinta.
Mm.
So I couldn't keep my, persona. Nobody knows me. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
everybody knew. And then next thing you know, the word got out in the yarda. Hey, Contreras was a preacher. Contreras ran a program, and Contreras this. So everybody else was, the other correctional officers. They're
Mm.
like, oh my God, they all know something about you. It is what it is. I mean, I had been around those guys for 6 years.
Mm.
So, I mean, to me, believe it or not, I hate to say this, I was at home there in the Pinta. You know what I mean? I wasn't
What
walking
prison
around.
was that?
That was at CMC, California Men's Colony,
Okay.
CMC East. And back then, that was a PC joint.
Mm.
So all the Emeros, all the NF guys, all the Black Gorilla family, the child molesters, all the cops, everybody that was PC'd up, what
Mm.
they would do, they'd put them in for example, Folsom or Tracy, they put them in K Wing. From right there, they would transfer them over, in the SHU program, they would transfer them over to CMC because it was a PC, protective custody program. That was the whole prison was protective custody. And we had guys from Folsom, Quinton, everywhere else there at my beat. And that's where I got a chance to actually talk and to re-debrief a lot of the old Mexican mafia guys that had been around, for years, that had dropped out of the Mexican mafia, Nuestra Familia, Aryan Brotherhood, and Black Guerrilla family in Texas Syndicate.
Okay. How many? What was that? The only prison you worked at?
No, no. From right there, I transferred over to Donovan State Prison there in San
Mm.
Diego, and I actually activated that pinta.
Okay.
I was working R&R, and my job back then was to identify street gang members by their tattoos, identify prison gang members, and immediately document them, send them over to the SHU. The first inmates that came through that pinta went through me. I was that guy, when you see that movie American Me, that
Mm.
as they're stripping them down, everybody bend
Yeah.
over, spread
Yes.
your cheeks, put your hands in your mouth, spread your mouth. I was that guy that was doing that. I did that for about a year there at
Okay.
Donovan. When we get the new buses, I
Uh,
was that guy. Everybody else stand a straight line. So I ran that and we'd give them their property. I was working R&R, and that's where basically I became, more of an expert on the tattoos, on the M and so forth. Yeah.
David, were you cool with this? I mean, when I was locked up and I would see, the correction officers, I would say to myself, like, man, I mean, I would never want to do that. You're locked up with them. I mean, your job is
Yeah.
going to a prison. Were you cool with it? You that this is you felt like, hey,
Brother,
this is what I want to do?
oh no, no, man. That's why I only lasted 4.5, 5 years there. I couldn't wait to get out. And I remember when I left Donovan, within 3 days, I started because I had to go through another academy, the police academy.
Mm.
When I left Donovan, I remember driving away from Donovan, looking at the lights and thinking, literally, I'll never forget that. I'm driving, I'm thinking, now I know what it's like to parole. Now I know what it's like to parole, man. I swear to God, even right now, as I'm telling you, I could still see the lights, and I'm driving my little, I had a blue truck, little Toyota, and I'm looking, going, now I know what it's. I couldn't wait to get out of it. I hated that job. I
Okay.
really did. You know what I mean?
Good.
I disliked it. But you know what? Some people like it. In my respect to them, I'm not putting them down. Trust me. But I wanted to work the calles. I wanted to work the gang detail. I wanted to work intelligence. I wanted to work narcotics, and that my career was limited there. You know, working a prison system. I wanted to work the streets. So no. I when I left there, I remember saying, I know what it's like to be parole. So
So
I was
you
very happy when I left, brother.
so you were
Yeah.
doing all this in hopes to hit the streets one day. That's why
No,
you were doing
actually, I never thought about hitting the streets. Once I was there, I go, hey, I'm gonna make this a career. What happened was there was a triple murder in San Diego. Ronnie and Hector Ayala, they had murdered um, three individuals and stabbed another individual and shot him actually, and that's where I got introduced to a gentleman by the name of Carlos Chacon. And Carlos Chacon was working prison gangs at the time, and he came to the joint. I met him for the first time. I had heard a lot about him. The guy was a legend in the California Department of Corrections back then, because he was working nothing but AMEC cases. So he's working this murder case, and he comes to the joint, and I'm working R&R, and he goes, David, he goes, they introduced me to him, and he goes, hey man, I need help developing informants that know about this triple murder by Ronnie and Hector Ayala, members of the Mexican mafia. So I basically started hustling up, and I got a couple of really good informants for him. And once I got those informants for him and I became best friends. And it was because of him. He's the one that pushed me to take the test again and for me to become a San Diego police officer. If it wouldn't have been for him, I think I probably would have retired with corrections. But I think I probably would have got transferred over to Pelican Bay. I don't think I would have stayed there. I definitely would have gone to Pelican Bay. But it was because of him that I came over to San Diego PD. He helped me realize my dream of becoming a cop.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were working corrections, you're out of
Mhm.
there. From there, how is it that you became a cop, a street cop?
Well, you know what? From right there, like I said, that was my last day. Within 2 or 3 days, I started the police academy. I
Mhm.
had believe it or not, I took $1,000 a month pay cut to become a San Diego police officer, because
Oh,
I
really?
was at a pretty high rank in corrections where I mean I was already off probation and I was making very good money, plus a lot of overtime. Even back then in 84, 85, 86, there was a lot of overtime. So I was making a lot of overtime. So I literally took $1,000 a month pay cut just to become a San Diego police officer, because they started us off at the very low ranking, low level. So and I remember I told my wife, "Hey man, we're back to eating rice and beans again. You know, we were eating steak for a while, back to eating rice and beans. Let me get through this academy, and then 2 years later, I'm going to be making more than I was as a correctional officer." And yes, 2 years later, I was making more than I was as a correctional officer. But so yeah, I took a big pay cut to become a San Diego police officer.
Wow. Wow, man. First of
I mean,
all, police.
$12,000 a month, $12,000 a year. I took a pay cut
Yeah.
on. Yeah,
Dang. First of all, Police Academy, I love the movies. I do love the movies, Police
yeah,
Academies.
yeah.
Mahoney and all those guys, man. I love those movies.
It
Um,
was like a police academy. We had a couple of those knuckleheads. I mean, we had a couple of them that showed up with 10 guns and 30 bullets, and they were all the flaquillos. They were all the
yeah.
ones that we knew that they had their lunch money taken as a kid. You know what I mean? We knew who they
Okay.
were.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taco Berry and
Yeah. Yeah.
Proctor. Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
All right. So
Uh,
okay,
yeah.
David. So you become a street hood. You're a
Yeah.
street cop with the cop uniform and all that, right?
Yeah.
Um, is that what you want? Did you just say like, okay, I'm here, I'm cool with this, or did you always plan like you want to raise up the ranks, you wanted to go big
Oh,
time?
brother, I was so happy. And back then in the 88, when I came on the PD, um, if you were good, they were going to send you to a command called Central, which was downtown San Diego, and it was Logan Heights. That was a command
Mm.
downtown San Diego. That was Central Division and Logan Heights. So when I was going through my field training, I was teaching my field training officers how to evaluate somebody being under the influence of heroin. Because I mean, I had all that experience through New Life, and I had
Mm.
that experience in the Pinta. I was teaching them how to read tattoos. We'd be driving, and then one of the guys would always call me Klaus. He would always, one of my training officers, who later became the number two assistant chief, would always call me, no disrespect, clusterfuck. He would
Mm.
always go, dude, you're a clusterfuck. And I would go, why do you say that? Because, dude, every time you open your mouth, it's to make an arrest. I'd be driving, and all of a sudden I look at him, and this is me maybe a month out of the academy, and we're going to field training. I would get one or two stolen cars every 2 or 3 days because I mean I had that instinct in me. You know what I mean? I'd be driving, all of a sudden I looked at my training officer, and I'm that rookie, right? I'm that new boot, and I'd go, let's stop that guy. He's a parolee. He's a parolee at large. And they go, how do you know? I go, dude, trust me. We'd get out of the car, put your hands top of your head, and lock your fingers, run them, and all of a sudden parole warrant, probation warrant. I just had that instinct. Well, it wasn't instinct. I had that experience. That
Yeah.
Pinta gave me a lot of experience. Working the program gave me a lot of experience. How to talk to people. When my new rookie cops would go back to the academy, some of them would have broken arms, some would have black eyes, and I would be the only one that go there. I mean, without a black eye, with not even my knuckles were okay because I never had to fight. I mean, later on, I did. I got to a lot of fights later on. I mean, because they were inevitable, but I always learned how to talk to people. You know what I
Mm.
mean? If I knew with Navato, I knew as I'm patting him down that he had a warrant, he was going to run. I mean, I was on him because it was instinct. I had that instinct in me. You know what I mean?
Knowing
And
how
a
to
lot of
read
times you have
people.
to learn. Yeah, I know how to read
Yeah.
people. I knew if
Yes.
Navato was going to run, so I was on him. My foot was ready for him to trip if he was going to run. And once it was down, I mean, it was on. You know what I mean? Pero, later on, yeah, I did. I had, broken nose or whatever. But,
Mm.
through my rookie years, I just had that instinct. So with that said, when I finished my probation, they send me to Central Division. That's where they send the best of the best, dude. I mean,
Okay.
that's the cream of the crop. And I got assigned to Logan Heights, and that's where I wanted to work, and that's where I made my bones. I worked there for 5 years in Logan Heights, and that's where I got a chance to work with the gente from the barrio, and I mean, I was that guy. If there's anybody from Logan Heights that's in their 50s or in the 40s, they'll know that when I hit the streets, los viejitos would always come out and they'd have tamales for me. The viejitas would always come out. They'd have champurrado for me. You know what I mean? I was that cop that los viejitos loved me. The gangsters didn't love me, but
Mm.
they respected me. I mean, once the handcuffs were on, the fight was over. You know what I mean? I never hit anybody that was handcuffed. I mean, once the handcuffs were on, the fight was over. So I always treat everybody with respect. But if they crossed the line, we dealt with it, and they knew that I was going to deal with it.
Okay.
So I got a chance. I got a chance. Another thing, I got a chance to work during those 5 years. That's when the Arellano Felix was recruiting the guys from Logan Heights to
Right.
go to Tijuana and become hitmen. I got a chance to work with all those guys except David Barron. David Barron was already in Mexico, but he would actually come to Logan Heights,
Mm.
and we would hit his house because I had informants telling me he was there. We'd hit his house, and every time we'd hit his house, they would always have one of the homies that was basically they call him El Águila. He was a guy that would run, and as he's running, he's shooting rounds. So we would all focus to chase him, and as we're chasing him, it was a diversion. That happened 2 or 3 times. Then we got caught, and then he knew we were going to run after him no more, so he never came across again. But during those times, he was coming across the border a lot. We were getting intel to arrest him. But I got a chance to work with all those guys.
How do you get an informant, David?
You know what? Treating them with respect. Treating them with respect, and just treating them with respect, brother. I mean, yeah, and I'm going to tell you, Ed, everybody, a lot of these wannabe gangsters or these gangsters,
Uh,
nobody talks. Nobody's a rata. Homeboy, everybody talks.
you know,
Under the right circumstances, I'm telling you, man, I was a cop for 32 years. Under the right circumstances, everybody talks. under the right circumstances. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
how I did it, I was always very respectful. And you know, a lot of these dudes, when they got, I locked them up. I sent them to the pinta. I was that one on during Christmas that would take gifts to their children. I was that guy that would take mandado to their mother. Not every day, but I did it once in a while. You know what I mean, brother? So I was that guy that word got around. Hey, you know what? This vato's a good dude, man. You know what I mean? But they also know don't mess with Contreras, because they also knew that if you did, I mean, there was one guy that I arrested 6 times in one day, literally 6 times for being under the influence in one day, because he was basically one of my dope fiends burglarizing the viejitas. I always took that very personal. You
Yeah.
know, when the viejitas, for whatever reason, the viejita, once again, that guy that helped that little boy that was helping those kids that were weak. I was
Mhm.
always that guy, even as an adult. Once I knew that this dude was a dope fiend and was robbing the viejitas, oh, I was on him, you know. But yeah, that's
You
all.
know, I remember, for those that don't know, I actually met David in person when I was out
Yeah.
in Florida. And I remember you and I having a private conversation. And we're not going to get into names or anything like
Mhm.
that. But I remember you told me what you just said. You said, "Hey, man, everybody talks.
Yeah,
Everybody talks when the
yeah,
situation is right." And
yeah,
you threw a couple of names at me, and I was just like,
mhm,
wow, like, okay,
yeah,
and I'm just like, huh, and then when you ran it down to me the way you
mhm,
did,
yeah,
it made sense to me. It
yeah,
made sense to me, and I'm
mhm,
like, yeah, I could, I guess, I could see that. I could
yeah,
definitely see that now. So, and I,
mhm,
I like how you stick by it. It's like, hey, man, everybody talks under the right
yeah,
circumstance.
yeah,
Everybody talks, man. You've seen a lot of, guys sing like a bird, man, under the right circumstance.
yeah.
That's crazy. So, how long you were a cop for 30?
I
What
was
you
a cop for 32 years. I was with 27 with San Diego PD
Yeah.
and 5 with the California Department of Corrections.
Okay,
And
but
then when I retired from there, I became a private investigator in
right.
Mexico for 5 years.
What
Once I
made you
retired from the police
what
department.
made you want to do that, David?
You know what? There's an old saying, Ed, that says when the music stops, the pain begins.
Mm,
And it was when I retired that all of a sudden I saw that I was addicted to adrenaline. You
mm,
know, I was addicted to adrenaline, and all of a sudden I was like a caged lion. Right, the day that I retired, a day later, I retired on a Monday. Tuesday, I went to Donovan, and Wednesday I had a knee replacement, and for 3.5 months I couldn't. I was going through rehab, and from going to that Monday, serving a high risk search warrant, I was working narcotics at the time. I mean, where your adrenaline's going 100 miles an hour, you got a team breaking down a door, yelling and taking people down. To 3 days later, your phone is gone. I no longer has a phone. I no longer have a laptop. I no longer have a car. I hadn't had a car. I had to go buy a car because I mean I always had a company car. I
mm.
always had a laptop and I always had a cell phone. All of a sudden, everything is taken, and all of a sudden, literally, when I was working narcotics, when I was working in the police department in general, sources, my detectives that work for me, so forth, were always paging me, texting me. You know what I mean? Mexico was always texting me. To all of a sudden, your phone doesn't even ring anymore. All of a sudden, your text, no more text. Nobody has your new number because you just retired. So, being there at the house for those 3.5 months, my wife was getting ready to leave me. I mean, I love my wife. My wife's very beautiful, a beautiful woman. We've been married for 26 years. We're still in love. But she was like, oh my God, who's this monster? She had never seen the monster,
Mhm.
you know. And being a cop for all those years, I had left the Lord in '84. I left God and I became uh, I became a monster. You know what I mean? I was, even though, like I'm telling you, I always treated people with respect. Of course I did. But what happened was, you know, you see so many things, you experience so many things, and all those things that you experience, you basically learn how to compartmentalize and put them in compartments in your heart, and there comes a time when they have to leak. You know what I mean? So after 32 years of being a cop, one of the things that I think that I see myself back then, I was very cynical. I believed in God. I never stopped believing in God, but I never went to church. I never went to family reunions. I was never with my family. I was that cop that 24/7. I was a cop. You know what I mean? I was that cop that I'd be at a birthday party, and all of a sudden, we see on television, they all get a page and they all have to leave. I was that guy that we'd get a page all of a sudden. Hey, the guy that we're looking for murder in Tijuana right now, or that guy that we're looking for murder right now, he's in Ensenada. We got to go get him right now. I was that guy that would always get a page and boom, jump in my SUV and go to Ensenada to go arrest this guy. I was that guy.
What was the title
Mm.
that you last left when the San Diego PD?
I was a detective sergeant. I
You're a
was a
detective
detective
sergeant.
sergeant. Yes,
Okay, so
I was the
from
one.
a street
Yes,
cop, you made it up to detective sergeant.
detective sergeant. Yes, I was at one time for 4 years the chief special assistant for 4 years. I
Okay.
was the one that would drive him around for 4 years. I did that.
Mhm.
I was the one that was the liaison to the Latino community, and for the first 2 years, I was the liaison to the Arab American and the Jewish community. Right after 9/11, I
Mhm.
was the liaison to the Jewish community, the Arab American community. I started that for the chief, but I was the one that every time there was an incident in the Chicano, the Mexican American, the Hispanic neighborhoods, I was the one that would go and basically work with the community to basically be a liaison between the community and the chief of police. So I did that for 4 years. But then after that, I went to internal affairs. I worked internal affairs, and
Mhm.
then I went back to gangs, and then I went to intelligence. That's where I was assigned to Mexico
Wow.
for 5 years.
House of Tattoos is asking you a question right here, David.
Yeah, what is it? Okay, working with the heavy hitters. Was there any invitation for corruption? Of course there was. Yeah. I mean, heavy hitters in Mexico, especially in Mexico. The dudes here, no, the Emeros here, no, there wasn't, because they knew who I was. They knew that I was straight up. You know what I mean? But in Mexico, of course, yes, there was a
Mhm.
lot. I mean, I got a chance to work a lot of the Mayo Zambada cases. I got a chance to work a lot of high level cases. And yes, there was a lot of corruption, a lot of bribes or attempt bribes. But the Mexican mafia, Nuestra Familia, no. One of the things with them, especially Nuestra Familia, when I was working the joint, they would befriend me. They were taught to befriend me. They were taught to be nice to the guard because they were always outnumbered. So they knew how to manipulate staff, and I would see how they manipulate staff. They never tried it with me because, I mean, once again, there's an old saying. What is it? Yo tenía colmillo. I don't know how to say it in English, but they knew that I had been around the block, so they
Mhm.
knew. But I had seen them, yes, manipulate other correctional officers that were weak. Yes, I did see that with others, but not with me. But with others, yes.
Okay. And who were you rolling around with down there in Mexico when you were a private investigator dealing with the cartels?
You know, I had a partner, my business partner, who stayed with the company. He's still down there now. Or
Mhm.
actually, he's in San Diego, but he still takes a lot of cases in Mexico. Oscar Armenta. As a matter of fact, we just did a special about 2 months ago, about a month and a half
Yeah,
ago,
I saw
where
it.
we Julio Cesar Chavez, we saved his life.
Yes.
That's Oscar. It was him and I that worked on saving Julio Cesar Chavez and his daughter's life. He's the one that I worked with in Mexico. And we did a lot of anti-kidnapping cases. We did a lot of negotiations with kidnappers in Monterrey, in Guanajuato, in different parts of Mexico, in Cuernavaca, different parts of Mexico. I did a lot of negotiations with kidnappers, and we saved a lot of lives too. And we got a lot of lives. We started some cases at $1 million, and we brought it down to 250,000. Negotiating for their lives.
What cartels were these?
Well, these weren't cartels; these were
Oh,
kidnapping groups.
okay.
These were kidnapping groups. One of the groups that I worked a lot, I guess, against, because I'm the one that negotiated. The guy was actually in Antiplano, the prison where Chapo escaped. He
Mm.
was there running a kidnapping group. He was actually running a kidnapping group from in there with a cell phone. And he had people in Tijuana, he had people in Monterrey, he had people in Guadalajara, he had people in Jalisco, in different parts, kidnapping crews as he's running them through there. And he got a chance to hear a lot about me because I negotiate a lot of um, people freed that was part of his cell, and they ended up finding his cell in his cell and basically recharging him. I think he was doing life. Now they gave him another 2 or 3 lives out of a major prison in Mexico.
Why Mexico?
Why Mexico? Why did I go to Mexico? You know
Yes.
what? To me, I had worked Mexico for 5 years. I was a liaison for the San Diego Police Department, so I got a chance to work with the Mexican police, the municipal, state, and federal police, also with the military. I got a chance to work with a lot of politicians, so I got a chance to know a lot of people all over Mexico. Ed, I became pretty well known in Mexico with the politicians, with businessmen, and they trusted me. A lot of them trusted me, and once I retired, I still had all those contacts. And
Okay.
to be honest with you, I think to answer your question, it was the adrenaline rush, brother. Because once I was retired, I didn't have that rush anymore. And every time I'd cross that border for 4.5 years, dude, I would get that adrenaline rush because I didn't know if I was coming home again. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It was the adrenaline rush. That's what it was. Yeah.
man, David, man. I got a kind of a long question right here. I don't know if you can see it, David.
Okay. See. Do you believe weed was as dangerous as they made out to be in the 80s and 90s? Teenagers going to the pita, branding them felons for life, mixing them with killers, savages, and rapists, felons for life. Let me tell you, as a cop for 32 years, not once did I ever go to a house in Logan Heights, City Heights, La Jolla, Rancho Bernardo, I don't care where I responded to a radio call where a man was beating his wife and his kids, or the wife was beating the husband, or the kids were beating the father and mother because they were under the influence of weed. Not once, never. They were always under the influences of tequila, of alcohol, of whiskey. I personally, I wish back then they would have legalized weed. I'm
Mm.
that guy that even though when I worked narcotics, we hit all the illegal dispensaries. Dude, I was doing my job, but I never believed that it was right. I always believed, and believe it or not, I had never smoked weed when prior to becoming a police officer or when I was a police officer. Never, not once. Even today, I don't smoke weed. But
Mm.
I'm telling you, I definitely wish that when I became a cop at a very young age, that weed would have been legal. I think a lot of the calls that I went to, a lot of the major incidents, if they would have been under the influence of weed, they never would have done that. The things that they did, killed their wives, killed their children. It was always under the influence of alcohol. So yes, I'm a strong proponent of weed. I believe it should have been legalized years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And to answer House of Tattoos, to answer his other question on how do you get that rush today, he talks boxing with me on Cholo Boxing. That's how he gets his rush. But we got Paul on here from LA Times, man. Shout out to my boy Paul. All right, David. So and I know a little bit about this because you and I we
Mhm.
we talk and all and but yeah, how do you now today, you're a retired man, um your struggles with that rush, um how do you deal with that today, man? I mean, today you're living it up, David. You're
Yeah,
living in
I
Fort
am.
Lauderdale, Florida, man,
Yeah,
right by the beach, smoking
mhm.
your Cuban cigars.
Yeah,
That sounds great,
yeah.
but that rush, where do you get to feel it? Do you still get it or no?
You know, 3 years ago, I always say two, but it's been 3 years ago, about 2.5 years ago, I regave my life to the Lord. I rededicated my life to the Lord. And believe it or not, Ed, it happened in my gym, in my steam room at 10 o'clock at night. Nobody was there. I was in there, and God visited me, and God touched me. And I hadn't cried. Even when my father died, I couldn't cry. I love my father, and I couldn't cry. I was so hard. My heart was hard, and I wept. God just came in and touched me. And ever since then, I still have triggers. And believe it or not, I know this is going to sound stupid, maybe. You know how I get my rush now? I
How's
go
it?
for a long swim in maybe shark infested waters. I don't know. People say, oh my God, you go way out. I go way out there once or twice a week. And I feel when I'm out there by myself and the waves are hitting me, and I love it. You know what I mean? And I'm out there,
Man,
literally, I'm out there 50, 80 yards, and nobody's out there. Nobody's out there.
yeah.
That's whenever I feel anxiety or something. I mean, I work out every day, but whenever I feel that, I throw my suit on, I run out, and I just jump in the water and I just go as deep as far as I can, where I know that I'm not going to drown because I need
Mm,
to swim back. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I just let the waves hit me, and I mean, right there, your thoughts are going. There's sharks. And you know what? Only, God, if it's your time for me to go, it's time to go. And once I feel good, that's where I talk to God too, believe it or not. I talked a lot
Okay.
to God, and I talked to my father a lot, who
Okay.
said, rest in peace. I talked to my dad a lot on those long swims. When I hit that certain place beyond the buoy, I just stay out there, and that's where I talk to God. And I just say, you know what, Lord, I love you. Thank you for having mercy on me. Thank you for grace. You know what I mean? And then after I have my good talk with the Lord, then I swim back, you know, and it's gone. And if I feel it in a day, I do it again. But that's how I do it. Yeah.
You ever think back, David, and say to yourself, like, man, I dealt with, the most dangerous prison gangs in California. I dealt with the cartels. I dealt with a lot of the dangerous street gangs. Um, the corruption that you dealt with in Mexico and everything. And you were always the law. You ever look back and say, like, damn, you know what? I'm blessed to be alive.
Every day. And Ed, my mom is a woman of prayer. My sisters are women of prayer. I'm alive because of them. I'm
Okay.
alive because God heard them. I got a chance to rededicate my life to the Lord 2.5, 3 years ago because of their prayers. And if somebody's watching your show today and they have a son that's a gang member, they have a son that is not serving God, or a son that's not doing well, pray for them. Believe me, when my father died, I regret this for the rest of my life. I have very few regrets. But as he's dying, the last 2 minutes of his life, I whispered in his ear, and he was in hospice. He was already dying. I whispered in his ear and I told him, Dad, I go, I'm very, very sorry that I never served your God, that I was never, I go, that I never became a pastor like you. I never became a bishop like you. I'm sorry. 2 minutes later, he passed away.
Mm,
And I wish my dad was alive. Well, I know that he could still see me. Now I have a ministry, and my ministry is Sheepdog Assist.
mm,
Now I get a chance to help people and to talk about the Lord and to talk about help people suffering from PTSD, help people suffering from depression by using God's scripture. You know what I mean? And so I wish that, there's no doubt that he's seen that I'm serving God how he probably wanted me to serve him before he died. But yeah, he's been dead since 2009. But today I'm serving God.
yeah. There's a few questions up here, but I got to get on to this, David.
Mhm.
Okay. You were doing this, man. You're taking down some bad mofos, in your line of work, man. You and I have talked, and I'm like, man, this guy. I'll tell you, man. Just everything that you did. I remember when I was a kid, right? The way people looked at cops. Yeah, there was kind of like this screw cops, right? But at the same time, they were kind of looked at like good guys. What do you think today cops stand, David, with a lot of the riots that happen because of injustices and things of that nature. Where today it doesn't really seem like it's really being pushed out there to be a cop today. Today it seems like it's almost in society where it's like cops are kind of like the bad guys.
Yeah.
Even with good people. Now, I'm not even just talking about the hoods and the barrios.
Mhm.
It just seems like, man, screw cops, man. Where do you think it stands today with cops? And, you know, how does that attract people to become cops?
Ed, to answer that question, I got to answer it this way. I wish when I became a cop that we would have had cameras. If you ever talk to a cop and a cop tells you, you know what, F the cameras, I don't know why we have, you know what, that's a dirty cop. Number one.
Okay.
Why don't you want a camera? You know what I mean? You don't want a camera because you're doing something wrong. You know what I mean? I wish that when I came on in 88 that I would have had a camera. It would have saved me a lot of trips to internal affairs where people made, false allegations that I beat them up or that I beat them up. That was basically it. A lot of those that I used excessive force, that they never attacked me, that I made that up on the police report. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I wish I would have had a camera. It would have saved me a lot of trips.
Okay.
And like I said, I think that is there dirty cops? Yes, there is. I would say that probably 2%. I don't know if they're, at least I'm talking about San Diego PD. I know in Chicago it's probably different. When I talk to Ruben Palomares with LAPD, I hear these stories and I'm like, oh my God. I talked to another friend that works for New York PD and I hear these stories. San Diego PD, I didn't see a lot of corruption. We knew who the cops were that were prejudiced. We knew who the racist cops were. We knew who the cops were that had their money taken away as kids, and now they carried the badge to get revenge. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because we knew that, we basically would put those punks in check. And I call them punks because they should never had the title of a cop. You know what I mean? We knew who were the ones that were cutting corners. We knew who they were. And because we knew who they were, we would put them in check. I wouldn't work around them. But if there's something ever came up, I knew that there was an injustice. I was one of the first to talk and to put these guys in check. But not every cop has the balls, the audacity to do that. You know what I mean? They
Right.
they they are brainwashed to believe that a cop can't do no wrong. Yes, a cop could do wrong. Working internal affairs, I fired people. I investigated people. I mean, that's where my eyes were open, going, "Oh my God, that guy did this." I mean, I did those investigations. You know what I mean? So, with that said, is it different? Yes, it is. And are cops being exposed because of the social media? I think a lot of them are. But like I said, I think it's probably 2% that are using that force, 2% that are biased. And I think that there's probably 95, 97% that are doing it for the right reasons. But we always hear about those two rotten apples. You know what I mean? Ed, but we know who those guys are that aren't doing their job right, and those guys should not be police officers. Now, your question was, is it harder being a cop today? I believe it is. I believe it's very hard because I believe that the laws that we could incarcerate people for example, burglary before in the past, I mean, it was mandatory sentence. You know what I mean? It was mandatory putting them in county jail. Nowadays, with these new laws, these new a lot of these guys are committing burglaries. A lot of these guys that are even committing rape. I mean, look at that one case where the MMA fighter. That's a perfect example.
Oh yeah,
He's
the
still
MMA.
in there, I believe, and the child molester got out on his own recognizance, which is unbelievable, or $5,000 bail, but yet
Yeah.
he can't. And his son was the victim. So, with that said, the laws don't back up, don't back the police the way they should be, and the ones that suffer is the community, is our abuelitas, is our children, is our family. They're the ones that are suffering because of that.
Yeah. I think just the bad rap that cops are getting today, I don't think it's healthy. Again,
Mhm.
go ahead and expose those that are doing wrong. But I
Yes,
don't think it's
definitely.
healthy to just throw a blanket over everything, because
No.
now people got to understand these things are it's voluntary. It's like becoming a truck driver. You
Yeah.
don't have to be a truck driver.
Mhm.
People volunteer to become a truck driver and then get paid for it, make that a career, like myself. But when you're born, nobody is assigned a job. You're not assigned to be a trucker, just like cops. And if we keep on doing this, if society keeps on pushing this, that cops are just bad people and cops are no good, and now everybody in the household, parents and everything, are telling their kids that cops are nothing but trouble, and they're just racist and they just hate and they're the bad people. Now nobody's gonna want to become a cop, and that's gonna lower the standards big time. And give more than just a few bad apples in the police department. I saw somebody in here, I think it was Charlie talking about Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. Yeah, I got some stories on them, but at the same time, I wasn't out doing good things either. So did some of them, um, abuse their authority? Oh yeah,
Of
yeah,
course, yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you always have those that abuse their
yeah.
authority. Yes, you
But
do.
I
That
definitely
take
want
it
to
personal.
say,
Yeah,
yeah, but I definitely want to say the interactions that I had, or people that I know that had negative interactions with them, they weren't doing good.
yeah,
They weren't doing good things in their life. They weren't Boy Scouts, and the Hudas went and started messing with them. They were already doing bad, and then the gets on the cops' radar, and they go, and then the Hudas excessively go and abuse their power. But again, you were doing bad already. you know um I'll just say this. Once I let go of my criminal activities and changed my life around, I'll tell you, I haven't had any bad interaction with cops. um it's
yeah,
kind of just I can't say that's a guarantee for everybody, but man, my interactions with cops were from here. It went way, 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 way down.
well, I'll tell you, Ed, two things. First of all, I named, these guys that got their lunch money taken, these guys that abuse their power, but I also got a chance to work with some great cops, man, some heroes, real life heroes. I mean, during 9/11, everybody's running out. Who's the ones that are running in?
Right.
They knew they were going to die. You know what I mean? They knew those buildings were going to collapse, but they didn't care. Their heart was to save people. And with that said, I got a chance in Logan Heights to work with some guys that, I mean, would take off their shirt for that. Even that gang member that was bleeding to death because he just got shot in the chest. I saw a cop one day take off his shirt and use it as a tourniquet to save
Right.
the man's life. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
got a chance to work with some great people, some great cops, and so yes, I got a chance to. Not that's why I'm telling you, everybody judges a whole society by two or three bad apples, but the majority of them are there for the right reason because they really want to help and want to make a difference in the neighborhoods.
Okay. David, man, I got quite a few questions here for you, man, but we're running kind of late
Yeah,
already.
I
So
know.
let's,
Could you believe this already? It's 9:49 my time. And
yeah, if
what
you
is
guys
it?
don't know,
7:49 your time. Yeah,
yeah, if you guys
6:49.
don't know,
Yeah,
one Mr. David Contreras resides in Fort
Fort
Lauderdale, man.
Lauderdale. Yeah,
Just enjoying his ocean view, sipping on a little
yeah.
scotch on the rocks,
Once in a while,
watching
yes,
boxing,
definitely,
man.
man.
Just
Oh,
living it up. But I'll go
yeah,
ahead and throw these at you,
yeah, yeah. Throw
David.
'em.
Yeah, rapid fire questions, man. Here we go. So when it comes to salsa, green or red, you can only have one.
Green, brother. I love green salsa tomatillo. Oh,
That's what
put
I
you could
say,
you
man.
could you could put you could put veneno in it, and I'll still eat it. You could put rat poison in it, I'll still eat it with a chip. Oh, green salsa. Shoot again.
That's what I say. To me, it's not
Yeah.
even a competition, Holmes.
No,
It's
no,
not,
not at
man.
all.
Green
Yeah,
salsa always wins for
exactly.
me. Red salsa only if there's not green
Yeah,
available.
yeah.
That's it. All right, David. There's three tacos:
Mhm.
asada, carnitas, y de pollo. Rank them from the best to the least. Number one
Dude,
being the best.
I would say I have to have four tacos, brother. I have to have tacos de cabeza. Tacos de cabeza are my
Okay.
number one,
All
man. You
right.
know what I mean? Over carne asada, over pollo, over everything.
Okay.
Tacos de cabeza, you know?
Those are
And then
great.
after a taco de cabeza, taco de tripa would be in my number two. Taco de
Uh-huh.
carne asada, number three. And taco de pollo, I never eat. It would be
Where
those
do
three.
you
It would
rank
be cabeza.
carnitas in there?
Oh, carnitas. Well, carnitas would be well, yeah, but I don't like carnitas. I eat buche. Buche is like the
I,
chicharrón.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't eat carnitas. I eat buche and I eat chicharrón. Now, out of everything, give me a tortilla de harina or de maíz with queso fresco, with chile habanero cut in half, and put a chicharrón in there and aguacate. And now that one also put rat poison and I'll eat it. You know what, man?
That
Chicharrón is my weakness. Chicharrón is oh, I already
that
found a place here in Pompano Beach where they have my chicharrones and my tacos de buche, and I
uh,
go order a pound once every 2 weeks. My tortitas frescas, my queso fresco, and I'm on, man.
okay,
I'm there.
that was gonna be my next question. For
Yeah.
the rest of your life, for as many years that the Lord blesses you with, David, you can only have one type of tortilla, de harina or de maíz.
De maíz. De
De
maíz.
maíz. All right.
I love
Okay.
maíz. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a
That's
good
I would
question,
roll with
man.
that too, man. The harina,
Yeah.
I mean, it's good, but yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
go de maíz, man. You gotta go de
Exactly.
maíz.
Yeah.
All right, and finally, David, you can
Uh,
only have one: a swimming pool
mm.
or a jacuzzi. Which way you going?
Ocean. I would have the ocean,
That
brother,
just
but only one of the two.
I knew
Only
you'd
one
say
of the
something like
two.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been in a jacuzzi and an ocean for I mean, a jacuzzi or pool in 3 years. I mean, I got the ocean, man. Right now, the water's 85 degrees. 85. I mean, it's beautiful today. I mean, I was snorkeling, looking at lobsters and looking at huge little turtles. They weren't big, little turtles. I was out there today. You know what I mean?
Uh,
Um, but if I had one of the two, I would go jacuzzi.
you go
Oh
jacuzzi?
yeah, after a good workout, go in the jacuzzi. Only because of my workouts. Sometimes I
Okay.
mean I just overdo it and I just need something just to chill me out a little bit. A jacuzzi maybe, but like I said, I haven't been in. We have a pool and jacuzzi here. I don't even go. If I want to go, it's the ocean.
And
Yeah.
see, I don't think people know, man. See, I
Oh
know because you sent me
yeah,
pictures, and I've
yeah,
been over there where I met you. The
yeah.
ocean's great, man, and your
Oh, it's
patio is
beautiful.
right there, and you're just
Yeah,
smoking a Cuban
yeah,
cigar, sipping on
yeah,
some scotch on the rocks. It's like
yeah.
I gotta make my way
Literally,
down there.
literally, all I do is just. I mean, I could hit the waves with a rock, and I don't have a good arm anymore. But literally, all I do is just walk to my balcony, and the water's underneath me. It's that
Yeah,
close. Yeah,
yeah.
it's beautiful.
Wow,
Yeah, blessed,
David.
blessed.
Well,
Yeah,
you know what, man? I still want to chop it up with you about quite a few other things, man. I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface here, and we just kind of like fast forward a little bit just
yeah.
so we could try to fit in a lot. But we've already gone well over
I
an hour,
know.
my man.
Close to 2 hours. Hey, you know what? Next time I come on, I want to talk about the day that Mayo Zambada put a hit on me. That's a
Let's do
very
that.
interested one. That he put a
Let's
hit on me, all because of you, because of LA. It was
mhm,
because of I was chasing a murderer who killed a deputy sheriff from the avenues. A
mhm.
group of guys from the avenues killed a deputy sheriff that was on his way to work, and I was chasing him in Michoacan. And I'll tell that story. That's a good story because it involves the avenues, LA, LAPD, and Mayo Zambada, and it involves the Mexican army, a general. And it involves it all started in Juarez. Juarez.
Okay.
So yeah, next time I come, I'd love to talk that story. It's a good story. You're gonna enjoy it. Your
Yeah,
people are going to enjoy it. It's a good one.
definitely. Well, you know
Yeah.
what, David, let me just go ahead and say
Thank
this,
you.
man. I actually had the privilege to meet you in person, and I remember somebody asked me like, "Hey, what's he like?" and everything, and I'm like, you know what? The best way to describe one Mr. David Contreras is he is the nicest badass. I guess I would say you are the epitome of don't take kindness for weakness.
That's right.
Like
Yeah.
you're a sweet man. You
Yeah.
are. You're a sweet man, smile and everything. But it's like, but don't cross me, homie.
Yeah.
Don't take that kindness for weak.
That's right.
Whenever I hear that, I've
Mhm.
been hearing that saying for many years. Growing
Yeah.
up in the streets, you hear a lot
Mhm.
about the say, "Hey, homie, don't take kindness for weakness" and everything.
Yeah.
But now, whenever I hear that saying, or whenever I think that saying, you're the first person that comes up because I'm like, now I know exactly a person. You do
Yeah.
not take kindness for weakness because he's a
Mhm.
good, sweet soul. But man, this dude's a badass, man. And David, I admire you, man, and
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
I'm proud to call you my friend today.
Yeah.
And man, I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of you, man. And
Thank you.
I'm gonna be a little bit of a hater. You're over
Yeah.
there on your patio, man, and just seeing that good
Someday
ocean
you'll be over
view.
here, man. Come visit us. You and your wife, without a doubt. Yeah. Hey, but
David,
I'll see you Friday. Hopefully, we'll be on the show Friday on Cholo Boxing.
yes, definitely. If you
Yeah.
guys don't
Good.
know, every
Yeah.
Friday we try. We try to
Yeah.
do it every Friday, 5 o'clock here on this channel. We talk boxing with my man David here and our man also Mike Zavala from Mike Angelion Sports. David, last words. Any last consejos? Any last word of advice, man, for the people that are listening?
You know what? If you know somebody that is suffering from PTSD or suffering from depression, um, go to my website. I could help you. I do a lot of free counts. I don't charge a cent for my services. Sometimes I'm up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and I say that humbly. Trust me, I'm not crying to nobody. But there is hope. There is hope. And my hope was realized through Jesus Christ. Do I still suffer? Do I still have certain triggers that trigger me? Of course I still have them, but I have a solution for them. I have an answer for them, and I could help you with that. I could help you if you know anybody that needs my assistance. Aquí estamos para servirles. Thank you, brother, for having me on your show, and look forward to Friday, hopefully, God willing.
Absolutely. As always, familia, live your life like you're on the road. Be aware of your surroundings and always keep a safe distance. Blood makes you live, but loyalty makes you family. Till next time, this is Ed the Total Trucker for my man, one Mr. David Contreras. Over and out.
God bless you.